Most experimental race cars fail. They look promising on paper, they make big headlines, and then they quietly disappear into the history books as forgotten engineering mistakes. And turbine race cars? Most of them failed too. Too complicated, too unreliable, too strange to compete with normal piston engines. But in 1968, one radical machine proved everyone wrong. A car powered not by pistons, not by cylinders, but by a jet turbine engine. And against all odds, it actually won real races. This is the unbelievable story of the 1968 Howmet TX, the turbine race car that shocked the racing world. To understand the Howmet TX, we first need to understand an idea that fascinated engineers for decades. The idea that jet turbine engines could power cars. Turbines had already revolutionized aviation. They were powerful, smooth, and had far fewer moving parts than piston engines. So engineers started asking a bold question. What if we used turbine engines in race cars? During the 1960s, several companies experimented with this technology. One of the most famous was the turbine-powered car that nearly won the Indianapolis 500 in 1967. It was fast, very fast, but racing authorities quickly became nervous because turbine cars didn't behave like normal race cars. They delivered massive power with very few mechanical limitations. Many feared turbines could dominate motorsport. But before racing organizations shut the idea down completely, one small project managed to prove something extraordinary. The mastermind behind the Howmet TX wasn't a massive car manufacturer. It was an ambitious racing driver named Ray Heppenstall. Heppenstall believed turbines were the future of racing, but he needed funding. And that's where an unexpected partner entered the story: the Howmet Corporation. Howmet was a company known for producing advanced metal components used in aerospace turbines. The idea of promoting their turbine technology through motorsport sounded perfect, so Howmet agreed to fund the project. And suddenly, one of the most unusual race cars ever built was born. Instead of building the entire car from scratch, the team partnered with McKee Engineering, a company experienced in racing chassis design. The chassis was based on a lightweight sports prototype design, but the real magic was in the engine. Instead of a traditional piston engine, the Howmet TX used a Continental TS-325 gas turbine. This turbine had originally been designed for military helicopters. It produced around 350 horsepower, but horsepower wasn't the interesting part. What made the turbine special was how it delivered power. Unlike piston engines, turbines produced constant, smooth torque. No vibration, no pistons moving up and down, just a continuous stream of power generated by spinning turbine blades. In theory, this meant the car could deliver power more smoothly and more efficiently than traditional race cars. But there was a problem. Actually, there were several. Turbine engines behave very differently from piston engines. For example, when you press the throttle in a normal car, the engine responds immediately. But turbines have something called throttle lag. When the driver presses the accelerator, the turbine takes a moment to spool up. In racing, even a small delay can be dangerous. Another problem was heat. Turbines generate enormous temperatures. The exhaust coming from the Howmet TX was so hot it could melt objects behind the car. And then there was the issue of fuel consumption. Turbines can burn fuel extremely quickly, meaning the car needed careful fuel management during races. Still, despite these challenges, the team pushed forward because they believed they were about to change racing forever. When the Howmet TX finally hit the track in 1968, it immediately turned heads. Not just because it looked futuristic, but because it sounded nothing like a normal race car. Instead of a roaring engine, the car produced a high-pitched jet-like whine. It sounded more like an aircraft preparing for takeoff than a sports prototype race car. Drivers described the experience as surreal. There were no gear shifts, no vibrations, just a smooth surge of turbine power. But testing also revealed something surprising. The car was fast, very fast, fast enough to compete against traditional race cars. And soon, the Howmet TX would prove it. In 1968, the Howmet TX entered several international endurance races. Many people believed it would fail. After all, experimental race cars rarely succeed on their first attempt. But something incredible happened. The Howmet TX began to perform better and better. And then, it made motorsport history. The turbine-powered Howmet TX won 2 official SCCA races. This made it the first turbine-powered race car in history to win sanctioned competitive races. Not demonstration runs, not experimental trials, real races. It was a stunning moment. For the first time, turbine power had proven it could win. So if the turbine car was successful, why didn't turbines dominate motorsport? The answer lies in racing politics. As turbine technology improved, racing organizations began introducing new regulations, air intake restrictions, power limitations, rules designed specifically to prevent turbine cars from gaining an unfair advantage. At the same time, turbine engines remained expensive and difficult to maintain. And while they had advantages, they also had serious disadvantages in endurance racing. Slow throttle response, high fuel consumption, extreme heat management. Eventually, the turbine racing dream slowly faded, but the legend of the Howmet TX remained. Looking back today, the Howmet TX feels almost futuristic, a turbine-powered race car competing against piston engines in the 1960s. It was bold, experimental, and incredibly innovative. Even modern motorsport rarely experiments with turbine technology, which makes the Howmet TX one of the most unique race cars ever built. Only 2 examples were produced, but their impact on automotive history was enormous. Today, the Howmet TX still exists, restored, preserved, and occasionally demonstrated at historic racing events. And every time it runs, that unmistakable jet-like sound reminds people of a time when engineers dared to try something completely different. But the real question is this: if racing rules hadn't restricted turbine engines, could turbine race cars have replaced piston engines entirely? Could the future of motorsport have sounded more like a jet aircraft than a roaring V8? And more importantly, what other forgotten experimental cars came dangerously close to changing racing forever? Because the story of the Howmet TX is just one chapter in the long history of the strangest race cars ever built.